Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting day is Monday, September 9th, 2024. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. A warm welcome is extended to councillors, staff, delegations, and observers who will participate in this meeting, regardless of whether they are physically in attendance in the council chambers in Listowel or being connected through web technologies. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers as able are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after this meeting as an archived video. To those who are viewing the meeting from this source, a warm welcome to you. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviors and or comments. Thank you. This time, of course, then I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. I do have regrets tonight from Councillor Matt Richardson. Let us move to item 5 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. Members of council have rich lives with engagement in the community. Sometimes they may find themselves with a potential financial or pecuniary interest in an item at the council table. Provincial legislation mandates councillors to declare this interest and, in so doing, avoid direct involvement in the consideration of voting on the item. I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have already so declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session. Documentation is to be submitted, if not already done, pursuant to council procedures. Councillors may declare now or at any point during the meeting when such interest is recognized. Colleagues, any of you wish to make a declaration at this point? I am not seeing any indication of that, so let us move forward. As chair of this meeting, I will manage the flow of proceedings tonight, largely in accord with our agenda and the rules of procedure. Some may be participating remotely by web conference. Should they wish to speak, they may draw the attention of the clerk to this using the conference technology's text chat function. If technical difficulties arise for remote participants, I will advise and send help. Let us now focus on the people's business. Part of that focus is achieved when those in chamber put away or silence their phones. Regarding item 6, then, on our agenda, I have a resolution for consideration to approve the agenda as follows: that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Nordham, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Blazek. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Councillor Rothwell was offering a manual vote in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. All right, let's move on then to item number 7 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. Consent items are placed on our agenda because they're believed to be non-contentious, yet they may warrant council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, or individual action may do so. There are 8 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of the last regular council meeting. Anything to extract here or any corrections to the minutes, colleagues? Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Todd. Good evening, Council, members of the public, and staff. Items 7.4, the Township of Russell resolution regarding AMCTO provincial updates to the Municipal Elections Act, as well as item 7.6, the Township of Sterling Rowden regarding public sector salary disclosure, please.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with extractions that you'd like to pursue? All right, consistent with our usual practice, let's have Councillor Rothwell take on 7.4 at this point.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. So item 7.4, the Township of Russell has put forward a resolution supporting the Association of Municipalities of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association regarding their request for the province to update the Elections Act, which is well over 30 years old, and they're just looking for a consolidation of terms and references and policies. I believe it's with municipal elections some 2 years out, it would be appropriate to lend support if council is willing to do so. And similarly, item 7.6, the Township of Sterling Rowden regarding the public sector salary disclosure, suggesting if the province is going to continue to require such disclosures, that in fact the $100,000 amount for salary and compensation should be going back to the 1996 and increased by a rate of inflation for that period of time, as well as on a going forward basis, so that in fact what was intended in the first place is continued on in the future, as opposed to having more and more staff and others being named specifically on the basis of a figure which is going back to 1996.
All right, so let's take item 7.4 first. The recommended action, as you've indicated, is that we send a letter of support with regards to the resolution from the Township of Russell pertaining to the Elections Act and its updating, moved by Councillor Rothwell. I think we'd send this to the usual suspects, MPP and AMO and so forth, right? I think those are reasonable local. All right, can I call for a second here? Councillor Andreessen, thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? All right, clerk's table, we okay with this one? Let's have the vote. Oh, Councillor Andreessen, manual vote in favor, okay. And Councillor Rothwell, manual vote in favor. And with that, it is carried. Thank you. Now let's turn to item 7.6, which was extracted as well. And I believe you wish then a resolution for the preparation of a letter of support for the Township of Sterling Rowden with regards to their motion calling on the province to revise its approach to public sector salary disclosures, which is popularly called the Sunshine List. And again, I think copies to the reasonable suspects here. Moved by Councillor Rothwell. You brought it up, Bud. Can I call for a seconder? Councillor Bozek? Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? All right, let's have that vote. And Councillor Rothwell is in favor. And are we missing someone? And Councillor Andreessen is in favor. And with that, we have unanimous agreement on that. So those letters will be sent. Thank you. And now we can turn our attention to the entirety of the agenda and the minutes as follows. The consent items 7.1 to 7.8 be received for information, and the minutes of the August 26, 2024 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call for a mover? Deputy Mayor Kellum is moving, seconded by Councillor Johnston. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Looks like our colleagues are in now. That's good. Thank you very much. All right. So let's move on to agenda item number 8. Our agenda indicates tonight that we will hold a public meeting pertaining to a land planning matter. For the purposes of executing this public meeting, I'm going to use my discretion as head of council to announce a recess lasting the duration of the public meeting. We are recessed, and now we will call to order a public meeting as follows, dealing with an application made under the Planning Act. It's my pleasure to welcome those who have come for the purposes of this public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act for a proposed amendment to the North Perth zoning bylaw. This is a statutory public meeting to deal with Z10-2024 application for a zoning bylaw amendment by Trident Group Limited on behalf of Connie Evangelo Bray for property described as Part Lot 27 and Part Lot 28, Concession 1, Elmo Ward, in the municipality of North Perth, 6175, Perth Line 86. Correspondence, reports, and comments received regarding this application will be considered by Council. Those in attendance remotely wishing to make comment concerning this application will be given the opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to appeal Council's decision in this manner must make verbal submission during this public meeting or have made a written submission to the Council. Those wishing to receive notice of the decision regarding this application must notify the clerk via email or telephone, giving their name, mailing address, and telephone number, or provide this information on the sign-in sheet at the back of the Council chamber. There's a table at the back. At this time, we want to call for a summary of this application. This will be offered by Nathan Garland, who is a planner for the County of Perth who works on North Perth files. Mr. Garland, welcome.
Thank you, Dave Kassenberg, members of North Perth Council. I am here to present the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z10 2024. As mentioned, the owners are Connie and Angelo Bray, and then the applicant is the Trident Group, and Carolyn Baker is representing. Staff are supportive of the application, however, I will go through the additional details as discussed. So for council's information, this is only applying to a portion of the subject property. So currently, council may recall that previously a severance was supported for this property to remove a portion of the property in two. So this rezoning request only applies to the smaller 5.5 hectare parcel, 5.22 hectare parcel of the subject land. So this is only for the agricultural portion of that northwest portion of the subject lands. The rest of the remaining subdivision would be addressed through a future rezoning application, so that would be required at a future date for council's consideration. So this only applies to this, and it is a condition of consent. Just for council's information, that is the outline of the zoning application that we're talking about, the zoning area that we're looking at today. Staff are recommending an A-82 zone, so it's an A special zone. This is to only allow for a house, accessory structures, and to recognize the reduced size of the property as well as reduced frontage on the lands. I will note too, there will be a minor adjustment in the NE2 zone that will line up with the future severance line as it's considered. So the zone line will align with that once the severance goes through and once it's consolidated with the zoning bylaw. No concerns or comments have been expressed by the public or agencies for this. Servicing is to remain private on the subject lands. As noted, the draft official plan for the County of Perth does include the lands as part of the residential designation or the neighborhood designations, as it's called. Staff are recommending an agricultural zone just to align with the current official plan designation. That area is aligned with the agricultural area. And the special zone would allow for a house, accessory structures, lot size, and frontage. Notice was provided on August 6, 2024. And just for council's information, we have provided an FD zone for consideration as well. So it would be the future development zone, just as part of the past severance discussion that was requested by council to bring that or to consider that. So we have provided a draft future development reference to the bylaw that accounts also for the existing house and then the accessory buildings to remain. Just a couple pictures from Perth Line 86 along the property. One's a former image of in the springtime, I believe, just from a Google Street View image, and then one's a little bit more recent as of today's date or a couple days ago. And for council's consideration, just review of the policies and criteria. This is a rezoning request as a condition of the severance that was previously approved. There would be some easements located in there that's not affected by the zoning in that consideration. The PPS, there is a settlement area that is not addressed through this rezoning. This is just for the agricultural lands. And then council previously approved the Perth County official plan and the listable official plan for this consideration. And then just a note to council as well too, you will see a portion of this property come back as the future subdivision for the commercial element. So there is a commercial element located at the very front of the property that would be also addressed to the subsequent subdivision application. So as mentioned, staff are supportive of the application and have provided a recommendation as such to North Perth Council. And that is the end of my slideshow presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Garland. Let me just check in on notice of this public meeting. Can I get some information from either of you about that?
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Notice of the public meeting was given on August 20th by first-class mail to landowners within 120 meters of the subject property. On that same date, notice was posted on the website and on the subject property.
Thank you. And I think, Mr. Garland, you've already confirmed that no correspondence has been received.
No additional correspondence on this application.
All right, thank you. This is the opportunity then in a public meeting to hear from those who wish to make comments on this application. First, we call for those who are in favor of the application other than the applicant. Are any with us this evening with that intention? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So now we call for those who are opposed to this application. If they'd wish to speak at this point, they may do so. Anyone wishing to avail themselves of that opportunity? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. So this is the opportunity then for the applicant or the applicant's agent to present to council on this matter. And I see Ms. Baker is with us tonight. Welcome, Ms. Baker.
Good evening, Mayor Kasenberg, members of council. I'm going to get this story a bit short. Is that okay? Volume-wise, perfect. My name is Caroline Baker from Baker Planning Group. I'm a professional planner representing both the owners and Trident this evening with respect to the zone change. Certainly, as you recall, we were before council on August 26 related to the consent application. As noted at that meeting, the intent of the consent is to sever those lands that have been approved through the County of Perth official plan and the Listable Ward official plan for development from the large landholding piece, such that the current owners would retain a portion with their existing house. So I'm just going to jump through the slides, not to replicate what you've just heard. I've got this. So certainly we are aware that we had this discussion about 2 weeks ago. I wanted to come to this evening to provide a little bit more information in terms of some of the intent with the planning, the phasing and staging with the applications that are before North Perth Council. What you'll see in front of you on the screen on the left-hand side is the approved County of Perth official plan amendment that was approved earlier this year. for this property, facilitating the extension of urban land uses on the site. That included natural environment, residential, and commercial. Just for comparison, I have also included the most recent copy of the draft County of Perth official plan that's available publicly on their website. As noted, you will see since the time OPA 223 was approved, county planning staff are recommending, in fact, that there be a slightly increased area in this portion of Listowel that would be included within the settlement area, so generally to the northwest, and you'll see that in the light yellow. So certainly regard has been given to that planning direction that is in draft, that this development and any of the applications that come before you would not preclude in any way future development. As noted, certainly before you this evening is the zone change to facilitate the conditions of consent. We will come back at a later date with respect to the draft plan of subdivision and the rezoning application for the development component. We did, just for information purposes, want to provide a high-level overview to you this evening, just to illustrate and have discussion about how all the pieces fit together and have been considered as a collective future development. So certainly the development design within the draft plan generally aligns with what was presented as part of the official plan amendment. What you'll see is some natural environment space, park space, a range of residential dwelling units from single detached, street townhouse, stacked townhouses, and multi-unit development, as well as a commercial block that fronts line 86. But just to clarify Mr. Garland's comments about the severed lands, is that they do at this moment include those proposed commercial lands as the site needs access on a public road. So in the interim, they will be a part of that property, and ultimately, when the streets within the subdivision are built, the retained for future development, the grazed lands can have access through Street A. So it's an interim condition, but that front piece is intended to be commercial. Certainly, the component of housing affordability and attainability is very important in Perth County and across all of Ontario. And certainly, Trident is cognizant of this. They have retained an affordable housing specialist to help guide them through that process of including affordable housing within the development. They are able to assist through the CMHC funding programs to assist in understanding. As you can probably appreciate, they have a number of programs and many forms to complete. So certainly having that expertise to ensure it's included in the development. Now, we will be back with the draft plan and zoning with probably more fine-tuned detail, but just wanted to let you know that this is being worked on as part of the development. They are proposing affordable housing units within the multi-unit blocks, having regard for the background studies that were completed as part of the County of Perth draft official plan. So there's a number of healthy resources in terms of number of units and price points in those documents. And certainly the housing specialist has reviewed those as well as we looked to providing those. The intent is to utilize the CMHC definition, which I believe is also included in the draft County of Perth official plan. And that definition is 30% of household income. And the intent is to have both affordable units in the multi-blocks and as well as the opportunity for secondary suites, working with the engineering team to ensure that where there's single lots, matters such as grading and parking can be addressed to ensure that those can be accommodated. At this time, Trident is looking at a minimum of 35 affordable units, but as I said, we will be back again before council for the subdivision application and can speak further to that. With respect to the current application, as noted, it would facilitate the consent that you heard in August. Certainly, we appreciate the comments with respect to future development and the future development zoning. At this time, the owners are requesting the agricultural zoning as it would conform to the County of Perth official plan that designates these sites agricultural. While the draft OP is out for review and proposes residential, that has not been approved by the county. We would anticipate that should that recommendation to expand the settlement boundary be approved, by the county, that at some point North Perth would be updating their zoning bylaw, and consideration of a future development zone on this site would be considered at that time. I just wanted to put a sketch up. So what this shows is how the retained raised lands could be ultimately developed in the long term, and the consideration that was provided to it. Certainly the design of Street A was intentional, such that the road could continue to be extended through that land and connected to the west. You will note there is woodlot located both north and south, but there is sufficient width for a road that would again allow for interconnection between developments in this area of Listowel. So I believe that concludes the presentation, but certainly happy to answer any questions with respect to the zone change before you, or if I can answer anything regarding the larger development, I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Colleagues, this is the opportunity to ask questions about this application. Anyone wishing to do so? Of any of those who participated? Councillor Rothman.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thank you for the presentation, both Nathan and Caroline. The question goes further to our conversation at our last council meeting regarding whether or not the agricultural zone in Franklin is the one to move forward with, as opposed to future development zone. What I am concerned about is the wording that I see in the draft of the zoning bylaw under the agricultural zone recognizes the existing buildings and structures, but all the other uses in the agricultural zone would be permitted. I don't think that's necessarily appropriate on a going forward basis, that we would see a plan of subdivision to the east and south, and a property in the agricultural zone would continue on in the future. I believe the future development zone provisions, which recognize existing uses, buildings, and structures, is the appropriate way to move forward, and would then comply with the draft county official plan, which intends the balance of this property to be used for residential development at some point. So that's the concern that I have in terms of the draft that we have before us in terms of the agricultural zone and what's been requested. As well as at our last meeting, I've expressed concern and others regarding the size of the retained parcel. However, that ship has sailed. But what I am concerned about is the future developments of the balance outside of the woodlot area of this retained parcel. And I see, because there was no mention before that I can recall in terms of the commercial block shown in purple on this sketch. However, now that it's before us, it answers part of the question, but not the whole of the question in terms of the balance of the lands. So I do remain concerned regarding the proposal, and certainly, although willing to move forward with the future development zone, I'm not necessarily in favor of moving forward with the proposed agricultural exception zone. Thank you.
Ms. Baker.
Certainly, through the Mayor to Councillor Rothwell, my understanding is in the staff recommendations, the drafting of both the agricultural zone and the future development zone have very similar permissions. Certainly in the agricultural proposed zone, livestock uses are prohibited given the surrounding residential. The intent of the agricultural zone is to essentially conform with the existing and approved and enforced County of Perth official plan. In my view, selecting the future development zone would be predetermining or presupposing the county's decision on the County of Perth official plan, which has not yet been approved. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? I think my comments previously at an earlier stage in this process have we indicated certainly at that time concern about the size of the lot that was being left essentially and the future use of that lot. It does seem like you're asking us at this point to understand that there are some future potential uses that are already being considered, including commercial block at the highway and or at the line. So I think all I can say at this point is we have to have good faith. Like if we're going to proceed on, at least on my objection, which is the size of the severance, I have to rely on good faith that there will be future development there, and that it will be respectful of the circumstances and so forth, so that we don't have a massive lot sitting there long term. But at the present state, there's some risk, right? The risk is that the owners of the lot that is kept just decide not to do anything further with it and have a very large lot in the midst of or adjacent to a subdivision that's developing around them. I'm not sure that I personally would like that very much. Um, but anyway, I think I'm going to express faith that in fact there will be some future development in this area, so that that large lot does not sort of stand as a large lot for a long period of time. Councillor Rothman.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I just want to bring forward an issue of concern, which I believe I heard Caroline speak to. In terms of the draft bylaw before us, in terms of the agricultural zone provisions, I do not see anything listing specifically that livestock uses are not permitted. What I do see is that the minimum lot area is 4 hectares. I see that the minimum lot frontage is 20 meters, and that notwithstanding the provisions of Section 6 to the contrary, the area zone A-82 may also be used for detached dwelling and accessory buildings and structures. And the last point is all other applicable provisions of the zoning of the bylaw shall apply. I see no statement that livestock uses are not permitted. So perhaps she or Nathan can enlighten us in terms of that statement. Thank you.
Let's call him Mr. Garland. He's looking itchy to answer this one, so go for it.
Through the mayor, no, thank you. The intention was to include in that draft bylaw through the application to prohibit livestock. I don't think there would be any objection from the applicant to amending the agricultural zone to prohibit livestock.
I was just going to offer that one of the suggested wording changes could be from 2D to remove also to only be used for a single detached. So that would direct the application to only be used for a single detached and accessory structure.
Certainly, that's a provision or a suggestion which is worthy of consideration. I still maintain that the future development zone is appropriate because, frankly, it recognizes existing uses, buildings, and structures. You don't need to go any further in terms of specific detail, and it doesn't take anything away from what the applicants want to do here, and looks to the future in terms of what we see as a draft, and frankly, exactly where county council has been going for quite some time in terms of this draft. So, if the applicants are willing to accept and staff have brought forward a future development zone for consideration, I think that's the one we should move forward with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I maybe call on Mr. Garland for comments on the pros and cons of these two options that seem to be kicked around, knowing that the staff recommendation has been for the A82, I think you said.
Yeah, I guess with respect to the comment to council's consideration, the agricultural zone was recommended because it does align with policy. That does limit the potential for appeal, etc. So if there was an appeal, it does align a little bit closer with that agricultural provision in the zoning bylaw. The future development zone, I mean, in looking through the official plan, we did consider this actually in decent detail. It doesn't actually align with a specific zoning consideration. There is some concern that it might create a little bit of a precedent, but at the same time, every planning matter is individual, unique on its own basis. So that is not necessarily something to weigh too heavily. But I would note for council's consideration that the severance or the settlement area is now in effect, so it does create a double MBS consideration. So a barring consideration in the future does limit it or impact it through that consideration as well too. So between the agricultural and the future development zone, there is no specific direct connection to the agriculture or the future development consideration tied to agricultural, tied to residential. We do see future development zones, I'll say more prevalent, being considered for future development of residential or industrial or commercial development areas. So,
I'm going to assume that in the process thus far, the applicant and the planning team at Perth County have sort of talked through these issues, and you've chosen this path. There must be a reason, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and not to speak for the speaker, but part of the direction is that it does align with the planning principles and planning policies that are in place right now. There is a recognition that this is going this way in the future, and that's the hard part. Is you're now causing this, I'll say, gap in the process a little bit, and I think that's even why this area was left out. I'll acknowledge that as well too. Looking back, they probably would have included this in the residential area if there wasn't that gap at the original time. So we're kind of playing a bit of catch up with this application, and um, our apologies, but it is what it is. I guess it's the easiest way to say it.
Okay. All right. Other questions or comments? Okay. So I'll read the statutory declaration then. Notice of the decision of Council will be given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Council's decision is subject to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. And with that, we will adjourn the public meeting, and I will declare that Council's recess for the purposes of that meeting is over, and we are back in our regularly constituted session. Okay, we do have a resolution on this matter to consider then. It is as follows, that the municipality of North Perth receives the report dated September 9th, 2024, titled Zoning Bylaw Amendment Number Z10-2024, affecting lands described as Part Lot 27 and Part Lot 28, Concession 1, List Award in the municipality of North Perth, 6175 Perth Line 86, and that the municipality of North Perth approves zoning bylaw amendment Z10-2024, affecting lands described as Part Lot 27 and Part Lot 28, Concession 1, List Award in the municipality of North Perth, 6175 Perth Line 86, to rezone the lands from Agriculture Zone A to Special Agriculture Zone A82. Can I call for a mover on this? Oh, Deputy Mayor Callum.
Yes, Rudy. Did your motion say List Award or Elm Award?
It says List Award.
Deputy Mayor Kellum is correct. It should be Elmer.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So with that update, it is two locations. It says Elm Award now. Can I call for a mover? Moved by Councillor Anstett, seconded by Deputy Mayor Callum. Thank you. Discussion and or debate? Anyone with further? Councillor Bronson.
Thanks, Todd. I made my points earlier, and if council is willing to consider adoption of the agricultural provisions, then perhaps we should have the wording included in the section 2 of the bylaw, which specifically excludes livestock.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think we consider the bylaw a little bit later, right? The bylaw amendment. So let's we can pick that up and pick up the bylaws off the table later in the meeting. But I think duly noted. Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. All right, let's move forward to agenda item number 9 on our agenda. Let's look at reports from the operations department. Item 9.1.1 invites council to proceed with a request related to the South Maitland River Drain Tenda Crossing under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. There's a little bit more to it than this, but we'll get there, and to appoint an engineer. I see that Mr. Richardson is queued up at our podium tonight. He's our drainage superintendent. The floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is, like the Mayor said, for Section 78, 76 under the Drainage Act for the South Maitland River Drain. The drain provides outlet for properties in Huron East, North Perth, West Perth, and Perth East. The watershed's approximately 55,000 acres. The South Maitland was last constructed in 1977 under the report prepared by E.H. Hooterstedt. He was an Ontario land surveyor under bylaw 7925. The 77 report called for deepening, widening, and replacing crossings, as well as a relocation of a portion of the channel. The request was received on August the 23rd, 2024. The request is for replacement of a low-level crossing to access lands behind the drain at Lot 2 in Section 9, owned by 100463570 Ontario Limited, which is Tanda Farms. The existing crossing is in poor condition and has the potential to fail. The large concrete deck has a hole in it, and the culverts are undersized. In 2023, we did a similar report. As you remember, we did the South Maitland German crossing. North Perth, West Perth, and Perth East landowners were all assessed a portion of the cost for that crossing. And the new one will be assessed the same. As part of the new report, the maintenance schedule under Section 76 should be considered. Any new severances would be included in this report for any future maintenance, and it would be assessed inappropriately. Also, Section 25 references block assessment to built-up areas. We did this one in the Turnbull report. We did that a few years ago. Some of the assessed may be levied against rateable properties in a designated area. Council may direct the engineer to block assess these areas. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Richardson. Any questions, first comments on this matter? Okay, I'm not seeing any. We're going to do this in two resolution steps, actually, to make things clear and appropriate in accordance with the Drainage Act. So, Council, let's consider the two different resolutions we have. First, as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, in accordance with Section 78 of the Drainage Act, proceeds with a request for the South Maitland River Drain Tanda crossing. Further, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth appoints Street Associates to investigate, design, and prepare a report for the South Maitland River Drain Tanda crossing. And further, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth directs the engineer to block, assess urban areas in the watershed. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Johnston, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Duncan. Any discussion or debate on that one? We're going to have a look at Section 76 next, as it turns out. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. And now the second resolution pertains to Section 76 of the Drainage Act as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth directs the Drainage Superintendent to proceed in accordance with Section 76 of the Drainage Act with the development of a new assessment schedule for the South Maitland River Drain. This is the whole drain. Can I call for a mover? Moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. So we'll be doing some work on that drain. Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. On that one, let's look at another drain here. Item 9.1.2 invites council to proceed with minor improvements of the Silver Corners drain under Section 78, subsection 5 of the Drainage Act, and to appoint an engineer. Mr. Richardson still in the slot.
Yeah, this is an easy one. This one's we're asking this purpose of this report's for council for a 78.5. So this is a minor improvement for the Silver Corners municipal drain. It crosses Lot 2 concession 9, so it's the property right next to it there. Again, it's Tanda Farms is the owner of that. The previous report for this portion of the Silver Corners was prepared by E.W. Shiflett. He was a PN with Gamsby and Manorel. The request for Section 78.5 was received on August 23rd. The request is for realigning 300 meters of that runs or get it to run along the lot lines and eliminate the need for a culvert crossing and to square up the field. The owner will be responsible for all the associated costs with this improvement. That's it.
And that's the story.
Yeah.
Got it. Any questions or first comments on this one? Okay, I have a resolution then as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth proceeds in accordance with Section 78, Subsection 5 of the Drainage Act for the minor improvement of the Silver Corners Drain, and further that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth appoints Spreet Associates to investigate, design, and prepare for the Silver Corners Municipal Drain. I call for a mover on this one. Councillor Johnston is always reliable for drains. Seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have a vote. And that is carried. Mr. Richardson, your duties here tonight are finished. Thank you. All right, let's turn to our Corporate Services Department reports. We have one here, I think, tonight. An interesting one for sure. As item 9.2.1, Council is presented with a substantial update to the procurement bylaw for its consideration. We'll call tonight on Samantha French, who's our procurement officer, to provide us with an overview of actions that are proposed at this time. Ms. French, welcome.
Sorry about that. Thank you for having me here tonight. My second time, I appreciate it. I'm Samantha, your procurement officer. I'm here to present to you the procurement bylaw review and update. The proposed changes to the current procurement bylaw aiming to enhance efficiencies, compliance, and transparency in all of our municipal procurement processes. The recommendation amendments are designed to address identified challenges and align with best practices. The municipality of North Perth's current procurement bylaw was adopted in 2017. Since that adoption, there have been significant changes in business practices, spending levels, and trade treaty legislation. These developments necessitate a creation of the updated bylaw to govern the municipality's procurement operations effectively. The updated bylaw will support open, transparent, fair, and competitive procurement practices, enable the ability to leverage technology, provide efficiencies in processes, offer more flexibility in pursuing innovative approaches in procurement, and address ever-expanding trade treaty requirements. It is in Council's role in this process to establish and safeguard the municipality's interest in financial integrity by approving a procurement bylaw and managing expenditures through the municipal budget process. So that's a bit of just an introduction on why I'm here. I do have this presentation, which I'll go through on to actually indicate what changes I'm actually proposing. Thanks, sorry. To start, I've outlined here procurement bylaw requirements, and it's actually why we have a procurement bylaw. It is to ensure that we comply with the Municipal Act, which is mandated to establish and maintain procurement policies for all municipalities. It is also to comply with trade agreements, including the Canadian European Trade Agreement, the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, which has thresholds that indicate when procurement should be competitive versus non-competitive. It is also to promote ethical, accountable, fair, open, and transparent procurement practices. And it is to establish defendable procurement processes, fiscal responsibility, and risk mitigation, and to provide clear guidelines for the municipal process, requirements, and approvals. So that's just the background on why we actually have a bylaw and what we plan to do with it. Next one here. I've outlined just the high level key changes. What I've actually done with the entire document is reformatted the entire thing to clean it up. So when you do look and compare, it's hard to necessarily track every change. So I've just tried to outline the ones that I think are significant that would affect people or council. So the reforming of the document actually included moving sections, correcting typos, updating definitions, updating staff titles, um, uh, including definitions that were previously maybe incorrect or that were not including proper language so that we could properly have those definitions in there. The biggest change that you'll note is the threshold, of increased threshold and approval level limits for competitive and non-competitive procurement methods in our Appendix A. Other things would be updating the authority to award and reporting section, updating the bid security section, including bonding requirements and risk management, improving our vendor performance program, as well as removing any unnecessary forms to the bylaw. As I indicated, one of the biggest changes is to the thresholds, and this is considered. The proposed updates to the procurement bylaw reflect the growing use of e-bidding tools, as well as rising project costs, and to support the dedicated procurement staff. So what we've done is we've actually kind of defined more clearly what is competitive versus non-competitive, as well as indicated who has the actual authority, other than council, after approving budget, to proceed with those projects. The change here is important to note that the situations will always require council's approval of budget. There's never a point at which point we will not have the budget approved. It will always come back to council. So this is just further defining the roles of everyone as well as the threshold limits. And it is a significant change. It involves expanding delegated authority to staff that already are in that role and include resources and training for that staff. This is the most interesting, I bet, of all for council to review. It is Appendix A of the bylaw, and as you can see, I've tried to highlight the changes of threshold and definitions within the appendix, the new appendix. So you'll see from the current chart there were some items that were missing. There is no definition of competitive versus non-competitive. There was no mention of treasurer being involved in any of the approvals, as well as delegated authority from the department head. So we've included those definitions of those roles, as well as when they're able to have authority to approve. And as well, we did increase thresholds. Now, non-competitive procurement is, in general, anything under $50,000. It does not hit any type of trade legislation, and hence the reason it is usually on a non-competitive. And as well, when we go next, is we get into a more competitive request for quote, where we've increased it from $50,000 to $100,000 with department head approval. And again, this is already an expenditure that has been approved with budget, that is within budget, that is straightforward, that has an open competitive procurement that has come within budget that would then just be approved to proceed with department head approval. The RFQ is generally straightforward items. They're similar to like vehicle purchases, something that can be quite defined and actually an outcome. Usually a physical item is the outcome of it. The request for tender is when we get into more competitive, higher thresholds and when trade treaties start being concerned, as well as when our risk management go up in the way that we procure those. So we did increase that from 100,000 up to 250,000 for department head, again, all within budget. And then we added the CAO and treasurer for the next level being 250 to 500, and then anything over 500,000 would still come back to council to ensure that high value are still noted to council. The request for proposal, RFP, is usually when there's something undefined. We don't quite know the scope of the work, so it has to go out competitive, but it's sometimes the pricing isn't the key objective of an RFP. So we've kept those levels the same as with the RFT, but it is a competitive process. So again, it is something that is within budget, within range, and any irregularities would then go on to the next level. The next level being direct negotiation, single source, and irregular results, which are considered non-compliant. So irregular results would be over budget, out of scope, anything like that came in one bid, no bids. Those are irregular results. So we did lower this threshold. We did not expand as much. We kept it at 250,000 as far as greater than to go to council, because it is something that's sole source or non-competitive. So it would then become whether or not you're doing it with justification for sole sources, or if there was an irregularity that the council had to explain. So those are the key changes, the large changes to the threshold on the Appendix A, and kind of the methodology behind why the changing. This gives you an example of what would have happened in the last 2 years if these changes were in place already. So as you can see from 2024 year to date on what we've already had, you would have 5 tender awards that previously came to council that would no longer have had to come to council, and that would have been approved because they were within budget. There was no irregularities with it. They all had within no issues with the actual procurement, and so it would have proceeded without any delays. In 2023, it was 15 tender awards that previously went to council that would no longer require that. And an example of some of these would be like, for example, we purchased a tractor. It came in at $25,000. Our budget was $20,000. We had to wait 2.5 weeks to come back to council to request that we could place that order for an extra $5,000, even though it's such a low threshold. That's an example of one that would have been moved straight ahead, and we would have proceeded with the purchase without under the new examples. So hopefully, although we are trying to streamline and make it more efficient so that our ordering process, once we do actually award these, can happen quickly so there's no delays. When there's a 2 to 3 week delay in ordering anything, it can push your entire schedule out, obviously. And although fewer contracts and awards will be reported to council, the updated bylaw ensures that council remains informed with periodic updates, including quarterly capital reports. We have FMW software now. We have bids and tenders on platforms that is accessible. So it's not the intent to hide any of these purchases. It's just to streamline it of an approved process that's already proceeding. Other noteworthy changes and updates is the reporting section and authority to award, which I've just kind of touched on. We expanded the reporting section to make sure that reporting to council is done on a regular, as well as knowing when to report and what overages are actually considered. So this noteworthy addition is that reports to council required when the acquisition exceeds the budget amount by 15% of the project budget to a maximum of $75,000 for capital or $10,000 for operating. And what that is just meaning is that there will be some leeway based on, when you budget a year ahead, you don't always know the cost. And it comes in within a $20,000 budget with 15, like only $5,000, we would still proceed with that purchase. But if it exceeds any type of percentage over that 15%, it's irregular. You would still come back to council, and you would then have that choice to either proceed with the overage or not. So again, not trying to remove it from council's consideration, just trying to streamline the process in general. Other things we've added are procurement guidelines are sustainable procurement to ensure that our green initiative is taken in consideration when we're considering purchases, as well as we updated the bid security section and the risk management. And what this is the risk management would be adding the requirement for insurance based on the scope of work and the project that is being done, as well as adding another layer of defining what bonding requirements are needed, as well as bid security is needed. And again, we set thresholds that are higher now because, again, inflationary impacts of what it already is. And that bid security, we've also defined digital bid bonds, which were not defined previously, which is the way that we are going mostly with our bid securities, as well as still accepting certified checks from certain vendors. But it is now more consistent and more defined in when we need those securities. So there shouldn't be any question from staff as to what security is needed. And that includes clarifying insurance requirements where I have a matrix that has been set up that we would go through and determine what insurance levels are required. And we've indicated that in this new updated bylaw as well. The other thing we've greatly updated is the vendor performance worksheet, which is Appendix B, and the matrix for that. Historically, not a lot of people were actually using the previous vendor performance worksheet. It was a score of 5 that's out of 10, where if you got 3, you couldn't do it anymore. Very confusing. So we did go ahead and correct the matrix to be a rating of 0 to 5. We've defined the matrix of when it's being used. We've also completed changes from 2 years to 3 years when we do get an unacceptable performance, to allow for vendors to be notified of when they have poor performance and when they're allowed to come back and bid on jobs. So what the point here is to reduce the amount of vendors that we don't have any performance related issues with. Sorry. Increase the amount of vendors we have on file that we have no performance issues with. So, in other words, we want to grow the vendor performance with high quality vendors and foster long term relationships with them. These forms would be used by the department head after every single project that we've completed, an amount of $50,000 or more. So, if we're doing this and completing this and having it returned, we'll have a database of vendors that we know are good, are bad, mediocre, and then in the new years, when we do new projects and these vendors that maybe have poor performance are bidding, we will be able to then communicate what our previous experience is with them. So again, just increasing the entire vendor performance program itself so that we have reliable, long-lasting vendors. The other thing we've done is cleaned up the back appendices to be removed. These were informal quote standard template in a CAO summary report. These are internal forms that don't need to be in the bylaw. They'll still be utilized. They just don't have to be officially done in the bylaw. It's all internal. And we've also added the procurement legislation and guidelines. This is just a quick summary on indicating again why we have a procurement bylaw and what our plan is and how we will follow it and proceed with it. And that is most of the updates there. I just have a couple more comments as far as it did start the review. For the current one, does say that it should be conducted every 5 years. It was originally established in 2017. I did start this review in 2023 with our previous treasurer and has continued on with our current one. So it's been in the works for a while as far as that goes. And the suggestions that we are recommending really reflect an in-depth review of current market conditions, which are post-COVID. We know all the pricing has definitely fluctuated since then. Broad comparison to other municipalities of similar size and scope. I've done all the research on our local similar municipalities and what theirs look like. I have reviewed current history of industry standards, comprehensive analysis of historical bids, compliance with current legislation, trade agreement limits, and any North Perth procedures, including our budget procedure and our policies. So that kind of outlines high level what the changes are. And there are no financial implications with this. It is just information for council to review and update the bylaw. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. French. All right. This is the opportunity to ask questions or make first comments, colleagues. Questions here. Councilor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and through you, thanks, Samantha, for your presentation. One issue that you did say was regarding the vendor performance reporting, Appendix B, I believe it is. Now, unless I misheard, but I believe you said it's not, staff haven't really been utilizing this as much as maybe they should. Is that correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Unfortunately, it is correct. I've been trying to encourage you, so that, yeah.
So I'll just suggest that that's a pretty important piece of this matter. So I'm sure between you and CAO Snell that will get corrected here. And can you just talk to us just a little bit further about the change? Again, not being terribly, hard on vendors which don't meet standards, but we're lopping off 33% in 1 year of sort of a penalty, if you will, of being able to be acceptable. So I understand sort of trying to encouraging to have a larger pool of which to supply, but just to answer this question, I guess, is have we had any vendors that have been excluded for a 3-year period since we've had this since 2017?
Your Mayor, to Councillor. Yeah, we have. Yes. Again, I've only started in 2023, so my experience with historical since this isn't as expansive. But yes, we do have a drainage vendor that did get put on the list that would be no bids for 3 years, which is coming up in the next year of it. And the old vendor performance, the issue with it and why it wasn't utilized as much is because it didn't really make sense. If you look at the old form, again, the scoring says 0 to 10, but then out of 5, 3 out of 5 is when they don't get to bid again. So the math there isn't mathing. You get out of 10 and there's no way to really do it unless you're giving everybody zeros. So it was really inconsistent as far as what I saw from the historical. If they didn't do the work at all, and that's the example of the vendor I'm mentioning, they were for sure rated, kept on file, and notified that they couldn't bid anymore. So it is one of the major processes in procurement that you are able to actually, if you had a bad experience with a vendor, communicating, documenting. This is the part of the documenting, and then we were able to have like a foot to stand on in future if we didn't want to work with them again. But otherwise, they could come back and have an appeal if we weren't already communicating this. So by implementing a standard matrix so that everyone is aware of how they're rating and what their rating means is actually we'll be able to implement it a lot more. I've also, with training and resources, we use e-bidding tool. There's actually a vendor management portion in our e-bidding tool that I'm starting to utilize now, and we'll start implementing once and if this is approved, that we'll start managing our communication with our vendors and the ratings through that e-bidding tool.
Thank you. And just through you, Mayor Todd, can we just go back to the amounts we were looking at increasing the thresholds, Appendix A? So again, we're looking at increasing the range of here between either, in some situations, 2 times upwards of 5 times greater than what our current provisions are. So, based on what we've heard, is there, like, you've looked at other jurisdictions, you said, and clearly the provisions are dated, but even inflation hasn't gone up that much. But just in terms of those new thresholds, other municipalities are of similar size are doing this. So we're just basically trying to be in the same ballpark. Is that right?
Close. We're actually leaders in this at this point. There are some higher tiered, specifically that I've looked at that are ahead of the procurement and have already done this. I did actually touch base with our upper tier, Perth County. They are in the process right now of reviewing theirs and actually want us to share our with them. These numbers are not from 2017; they're actually from previous to that as well. They just have never been changed since that last update. The other municipalities that are within us, they don't have the processes that we already have in place, or the e-bidding tool, or the dedicated procurement staff, or the FMW software for budgeting, or the processes. So when I speak about that, us being ahead of it, it's because of the tools and resources we have. Why I'm suggesting this compared to, say, West Perth or the smaller tier. The upper tier is similar to County of Wellington, are already in line with this. So I'm more along the lines of using our resources and our tools to put us ahead of the game and try and streamline all of our efficiencies.
Anyone else with questions or comments? Councillor Plazak.
Thank you for your presentation, Samantha. I very much like what you're wanting to do with all of the changes to vendors. That sounds really great. And actually, Councillor Rodwell sort of covered my question about best practices and neighboring municipalities or similar municipalities. My struggle is that while I understand the need for efficiencies and streamlining where we are able, this just doesn't feel like a place that I'm comfortable doing it. And so I'm going to actually have to vote against this recommendation, which I like so much of it, but I can't get on board with that portion.
And through you, Mayor, and the thresholds are pushing it, for sure. Like I said, we're trying to mainstream a lot of what's going on here, and so I can understand that. It is the role, and this is I understand, but it isn't the intent of the bylaw is for it to be preceded after the budget approval. So it really is that time for council to actually make the comments, make any changes, have their say is during that budget process. And once that budget is set, this is an intent to have staff that are delegated with proper authority, resources to be able to streamline and do their job as far as not having to keep them back. And it's not that it isn't about communication or taking any authority away, it's more about the timelines as well. Delays, we're only having council every other Monday and or once in the summer. There's been projects that have been delayed literally just because we can't get authority to approve them. And so again, it's definitely can review the thresholds. It's a suggestion. These are my suggestions based on the research I've done. But it is the thought around it that it's not to take out away your authority. It really is just to use the resources we already have.
Anyone else? So I have a couple of questions, and I think I'm kind of in the same ballpark as Councillor Plazek at this point. I'm going to tackle it from a different angle, though. I think we have citizens in our community who would be rather horrified to see that the CAO has a $500,000 expenditure authority, even if budgets have been approved. I think that the notion that treasurer has that authority and department heads have authority up to 250,000. Some people would say, wait a minute, shouldn't we have a clear mechanism for this information about these decisions to be made available to the public so that it can be critiqued? And so I guess my question actually is I can appreciate the levels are interesting and challenging to some of us. But the real question is, how are we going to let the public know about these decisions, which are their tax dollars and substantial in scope at times? We do it through the budget process. I get that. But remember, and at least this is the way I remember it, when we're looking at the budget, a lot of the detail is in the project sheets for the capital side. So we get pretty good detail about the capital side. But the operating side is not nearly as detailed, generally speaking, because there's just general operations and you're buying some things, right? I think we need to consider what the communication vehicle is, both for council as stewards of the community, so that we know when a certain threshold has been exceeded. And I don't know what that is, but I think it's lower than $500,000, to be honest. And I think that the public has some right to know this information as well. So what are the communication plans or proposition so that all of these purchases that are significant in scope are documented?
Thank you. You're right. Capital definitely gets more definition and define of scope than operating. So there's always that as far as knowing what's going on. Our e-bidding system is called Bids and Tenders. It is a public platform. Anybody can go on to North Perth Bids and Tenders, go to the main page and see every single tender that we've ever issued. It has the award date, has the award time, has the award person, has every single bid submitted, and it will have the amount awarded if it's not an RFP, which we don't share. It's based on scoring. Going forward, we would probably post up the scoring if that was to be the case. So again, our bids and tenders e-platform is a public-facing platform. You guys can actually access it yourself. You wouldn't log in and see all the background details, but the front end of our e-bidding system is public. And then, as well as the reporting, we did update our reporting section. We have no intent of hiding anything. It is going to be public, but it just wouldn't be every Monday that we have at council. It would be quarterly or a method to it. We didn't want actually timing to it in case council got busy and we didn't know what was going on as far as the reporting. But it would be on a regular basis. So again, it depends on operating versus capital. I do understand that that is more detailed within the capital, but again, the reporting is open and available, and the platform is public.
Okay, and my second question, if you can just walk again, I wasn't crystal clear on the approach to deviations against the proposed budget. So if we have a project that we put out there for 250,000 and it comes in at 350, what are the triggers that would draw the attention of council to this, or what are you proposing as those triggers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we obviously get a budget. That's the what we start with as our starting threshold. If for any reason it were to come in over budget, and that includes exceeding that 75,000 or 15% for capital or 10,000 for operating, if it exceeds that amount, any of like the lowest bid, of course, we're not talking about all the bids, just the lowest compliant bid, then it's already triggered within there that it says that we always rely on proper authority to award. So it's just not automatically approved. It would then, same as what we're doing now, we would go to council, we would indicate the overage, the percent overage. You guys would then make that decision on whether or not it proceeds or not after it goes to the public. Now, if there's something that comes in where the scope slightly changes, it would come to you too. Because as you said, the capital, we define department heads during budget process what the project is for. If for any reason it were to deviate from the actual definition of it, we would come back with a report to council. Same thing would be for any new uh, procurement. It would not, even if it was only a $10,000 procurement, if it was not already approved on the budget, it would still come to council. Anything that was unbudgeted prior to the budget process needs pre-budget approval. So again, council reports the same way that we would previously. However, we would mark them at coming to council. And the only other thing I would, as far as mentioning go, is that our e-bidding system also has an approval tool. So I haven't started using it yet because generally we come to council for approval. But it is an electronic e-bidding approval where someone like our CAO would have to log in to their special login to approve it. So it's not willy nilly, oh, our CAO can just write whatever. It's recorded, it's defined, and it's managed within our e-bidding system. And that would be the intent going forward if we moved ahead with approvals of this nature.
Okay, let me just make sure I got these numbers right. You mentioned the word 15% at one point. You mentioned $10,000 for operating, and you mentioned $75,000 for capital. How does the 15% intersect with those two other numbers? What am I missing here?
For example, if I have a $20,000 budget and it comes in at $25,000, that's within the percentage, but it's under the 75,000. However, if I had a $100,000 budget that came in, you know, 10% over, that's going to be over the $75,000. So again, it was about a maximum up to, not to exceed it on all levels. So again, if it's a smaller amount, it'd be more based on the percentage, where if it was a larger amount, it'd be more not exceeding the maximum dollars amount. And the math, I was going to say, I have examples. I didn't bring them with me. I apologize on how that works out. But it's the percentage would be more applied to ones that are like smaller. Ones that wouldn't exceed that 75,000. So again, like a $20,000 comes in at $5,000 more for a tractor. Would you want us to stop and come and get your approval for that, or buy the tractor at within the 15%? That gives us that leeway there to be able to still proceed, make that purchase of a defined item. It's still going to get posted with all the pricing. You're going to see it on your reporting. It's just that we didn't have to delay ourselves from buying the thing that we just already defined we were going to buy.
I think I vaguely understand. One of the common criticisms of vendors of procurement processes for municipalities is the complexity of the forms and documentation. And I know that you and I have privately talked about trying to simplify that. And so, can you comment on whether we're doing our best to reduce the red tape around the procurement so that there's not all kinds of customized forms, appendices A to Z kind of thing? Like that would be bad, right? So, if you can update me on where we're at with regards to process, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. I've definitely standardized all our front end templates. Been working on it for the last year and a half to make sure RFTs, RFQs, and RFP front lines all are standardized. The other thing that we standardize is in the e-bidding. I'm now using the contract document module. So every project has the same form of agreement in the front end, which has to be signed and returned from the vendor. So they're well aware that what documents we're using, and it's posted onto the e-bidding site that they can actually share and access themselves. So again, trying to use the tools that we have to bring in the vendors to participate in uploading those forms. So we did create a form of agreement, which is a standard front end contract form where we would then we did have legal look it over as well. So I've been using that standard form, and then the bid documents that define the project are the appendices to the form of agreement. So every single form of agreement for a vendor that we create a project with is standardized, unless it's a complex road construction, in which case we're usually generally dealing with engineers and a different contract setup.
Do we, from time to time, allow alternative proposals to be submitted for things that are in the RFP stream?
Sorry.
Alternative proposals. So sometimes a vendor has a solution that is not as prescribed as could be in the definitions for
Only by RFP. That's RFQ, RFTs are defined scope of work. RFPs, that's why they're set up the way that they are, as far as the level being slightly different. And as far as the way, well, not the level, the competitiveness, the way we score it. My apologies. We don't score it based on pricing because it is a solution to a problem we haven't quite defined. So that is the definition of going out for an RFP. So they are definitely allowed to, but at that point we put up an evaluation criteria, specifically weighting on everyone. So for example, we're doing consulting for parks. We can't tell them exactly what we want, so it's set up where we judge them based on their background, and the pricing is only a small part of it, and it's all calculated, and that is not based on the pricing, it's based on the actual outcome of the score. And that's why when you guys see the RFPs, you only see what the scoring component is, as opposed to everybody's bids, because the bidding is a proposal that is undefined, and so we're determining it based on what we need.
Certainly, I have taken note, and I don't want to bedraggle this out here, but certainly taken note that sometimes a solution can be specified in an RFP process, and that perhaps there's 5 components. And in fact, there's a vendor out there who can actually solve what would have been 5 pieces with 3 pieces. And so there should be allowance, certainly, for the alternative proposal that will address the outcomes as opposed to the specified 5 steps.
There's other methods that we would use depending on what that is. The RFPs are generally set up where we, again, don't know the entire scope of the exact, but we also have different tools like the RFI, which is a request for information. That could be a competitive process that we will put out. We could also do rosters of individuals that would be able to work with them to provide us solutions on what we need. So again, this is just a high level here, whereas requests for expression of interest, we can go through those as well. Whereas if there's a vendor that's out there that wants to saw on our budget that there was a project they think they could work on, they could send us an expressive interest, and we could issue that. And so again, lots of tools and resources to be able to work with our vendors and really get what the municipality needs the best way we can for the least amount of money.
And hopefully thinking about the red tape that the other side can create a lot of headaches. All right. Anyone else with questions or comments at this point? It looks like Treasurer Romany wants to make some comments. So.
Thank you, Mayor Kirstenberg, and thanks, Sam, for the presentation. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things as well. With the thresholds, there's also wording in the bylaw at the discretion of staff, council, CAO. There is a feel that the report should come forward despite it meeting the thresholds where it wouldn't necessarily need to come to council. If that request is made or done by staff, we would still see some reports, like for example, I would use like the MAP 59 project, despite it being the $1 million project, but if it was on a smaller scale, there's an importance and a value or council should be involved in that decision. There is that authority within the bylaws, not automatic default 100% to go through. there is the opportunity at the discretion level. Furthermore, the quarterly report that you saw in the agenda package and the information report was another vehicle that we would be continuing to bring forward. So that will be the addition to the bid and tenders website that Sam had mentioned as well. In that report, we did clearly stipulate where the award, what the award amount is, was awarded to, and what the status is as well of the contract as well. So I just wanted to add those 2 points as well. And I think your question earlier as well, the $250,000 to $350,000, I'm pretty sure that would warrant a report to be brought forward to council, just because it is in excess of 15% and it's in excess of $75,000 cap.
Okay, thank you. I have to admit that I was caught by surprise that I or any other citizen could go on to bids and tenders and see these results. I don't know if all my colleagues knew this before me, but sometimes I'm the last to know. Councillor Andreessen.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor Kasenberg. I was actually surprised by that information. And so it begs the fact there's no way our residents know about it. Like, let's be honest, if we don't know about it, then how do our residents know? And, you know, it's so, communication is just so hard. I mean, we can put things on the front page of the banner and nobody knows anything that's happened, right? So I'm not saying there's a perfect answer. It's just, I'm not sure things or information in another database for our public to access is really the right way to communicate. But that's my concern, and the thing about these meetings is that it's public, and we do have people following our meetings, and those kinds of minutes are proven. They're provided on display and can be accessed, and that's as we make decisions on procurement and on any expenditures we make, it's all recorded that way too. So that's the difficulty I have. It's just around how we're communicating to the public about how we are spending our money, even though we are definitely making those purchases or those decisions, through the budget. I think more follow up, more detailed information about how we're spending that money is really, something that the public appreciates. So those are my thoughts right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Andreessen. CEO Snell.
I certainly understand the general sentiment of council, but unfortunately, with the free trade agreements and the legalities of procurement, those decisions are really already mostly taken out of council's hands. I haven't, in my 14 years in North Perth, had us turn down a staff report regarding a tender. The staff bring the tender report forward, council accepts the lowest tender as required by law. We would be doing the very same thing as staff in this bidding process. Now, we can certainly, as Sam suggested, we're certainly more than willing to have talk about the level set, but we can maybe do a better job of providing people where they can find the information. I think we can all agree that's probably a solution that needs to happen. It's all the way back to 2015 when we started using e-bids. I assume our vendors are aware of it, which a lot of them are residents, but so we can do a better job even how we present that to council. But even for procurement standpoint, as long as we're following the rules that Sam is sort of policing us and making sure we're doing the proper job, procurement comes down to the free trade agreement signed by more senior levels of government, especially when you're dealing with the tender stuff.
I think this speaks to a concept that I raised last term, not this term of council, about having a dashboard with corporate performance metrics and information, right? And so I think that this is a fine example of where a corporate dashboard where there was access to the bids and tenders website, very obvious, would would shine more light on this process. And I think that's the piece of the puzzle, because I certainly was impressed that you mentioned about transparency. But what does it actually mean? And I think for our taxpayers, there are people who are sitting in the coffee shops looking at those numbers, the thresholds now, and saying, "Oh no!" And the answer is to shine light on the purchase prices and bids and so forth, to try to resolve some of that concern about staff discretion in this. Um, I'm going to ask you the hard question because I think we might as well put it on the table to make sure we understand. There are times when a local bidder loses by a very few dollars. And the community, in hearing about this, sometimes those have come to the table, and we appreciate that the local vendor lost by a little bit. And people in our community find that obnoxious, to be honest. They're quite concerned about promoting local business and making sure that local business is successful and is able to do business well with the municipality. So I'm asking you the question. I mean, I know that historically we have not bent in terms of our procurement process on that because there's a principle at stake and there's probably these international treaties that you're alluding to. But if you'd like to offer some comments so that not just this council but our community can hear the answer to those questions, I think that would be quite timely.
For sure. There is no preference given to any vendors. That's the gist of procurement in general. That everyone comes in almost blind as far as all the specifications are set out to everybody. There's vetting as far as bid technicality. So as long as the technicality comes in, it really comes down to lowest compliant bid. And so, truthfully, the evaluators and staff and everyone generally don't even get to see the names of the people that aren't the lowest compliant bid if they've already passed the technicality. And it has nothing to do about a preference other than when we start using this vendor performance evaluation sheet, that would be the only thing that we would cross check after a bid comes in. So, in other words, they our vendors, we appreciate them. I love our local vendors. I try to have good relationship with every vendor that we have. I support and anyone that doesn't even get a bid, we try to communicate why they didn't get the bid, how they can do better, and we encourage them to bid again because they're the resource of how we get our products, right? So it's never about that, but it's just not considered. There's no preference just because it says listable. It is blind, pretty much. Previously, the bids would have been sealed before our e-bidding system, and you wouldn't have even known, just amounts, and that's it. So again, no preference given, and that is a procurement best practice that is based on trade treaties as well as Ontario, my code of conduct for Ontario Public Buyers Association.
Thank you. CEO, something you want to add to this?
I certainly think one of the things we've tried very hard to do is to actually make sure all our local vendors are aware of how they become one of our vendors, make sure they get the tenders and documentation when it's made available. I've talked to many of our local vendors that are also having great success applying to other jurisdictions for work as well. So they certainly understand if we become protectionist in North Perth, that could also, in theory, happen everywhere. That's why the free trade agreements are set up the way they are, so that local vendors aren't given that protection. So certainly we have done a lot of work to make sure our local vendors are knowledgeable when we have a tender out, and certainly in speaking with them, they are also taking, um, especially the new electronic age of land municipalities, using e-bids. Once they become a vendor for us, they can also get e-bids from all the rest of the municipalities, anybody using e-bids.
Okay, thank you. I think sometimes, as I said, the community hears stories of these things and expresses its concerns that we're not being preferential to Listowel-based or North Perth-based vendors, and there are reasons. I'm aware of them, but I'm glad to have them rehashed in the public domain, I think, tonight. Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. And through you, Samantha, when we talk about, again, Appendix A and the purchasing authority, so we have in the first two, we talk about department head or delegate, and likewise department head or delegate. So, and then otherwise, it's specifically named position. What happens if one of these individuals on vacation or is sick and so on? And how do we, to your point, if something is of a time sensitive nature, how do we deal with that on the basis of specific appointments if they are unavailable, whether through vacation, whether through sickness or something? How do we deal with that?
Well, first is planning and organizing to make sure I know when they're all on vacation, so I don't do that. That doesn't always happen. Level up it as far as it goes. Department head or delegate, and when we say delegate, means the department head will specifically name someone in their department with their name, how much they're delegated for, and what kind of scope they're delegated for, and I will have that on record. And if they are not around or the department head, it would then go level up. So in other words, CAO treasurer, and if they're not here, like treasurer to CAO, and if they're not around, it would go to council. Again, it goes leveled up to the highest council. So level of purchasing is always went up. It would never go down. But mostly it's about planning, and that's kind of part of the budgeting process. Part of when we're doing like our year of planning for procurement, we're going to make sure that people are around or whoever it needs to be the best we can. Obviously, especially if something's an emergency, there is actually a stipulation in the bylaw about emergency purchases, and that's more for like natural disasters, obviously, and things like that. But it does stipulate in there that the CIO actually has the authority to make purchases in an emergency in lieu of council direction.
Okay, anyone else with comments, questions at this point? Shall we consider the resolution then? All right, the resolution that we have is as follows. This is not the decision point, this is the receiving the report. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives a procurement bylaw review and updates report for information. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Rothman, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Johnston. Any further discussion or debate pertaining to the resolution? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. All right, let's move forward then to item 9.3.1, reports from Development and Protective Services Department. 9.3.1, Council is invited to appoint Mike McKean of RSM as a building official in North Perth. It looks like CAO Snell is substituting for Ms. McMullen tonight on this one. CAO Snell, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just as a last minute change, I'm presenting a report on behalf of the building department. I think the report itself is self-explanatory, but really we are trying to take advantage of appointing one inspector from RSM just to assist us with some of the larger building projects that we have going forward, particularly the apartment building. And this position will help us with some of these bigger projects, but also mentor our current staff that has just become qualified in this type. I just did want to let council know that we did budget a significant amount for RSM services in 2024, and to date we've used about 25% of that budget. So we certainly are have come a long way of not using RSM when we use them when they're necessary. So that's the report.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, questions or first comments? Councillor Anston.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Thanks, Chris. Maybe I missed it. Maybe just oversight. Is there a term on this?
I didn't check the bylaw. Don't think there is.
Okay.
But if that's something the council wanted to add, we could add that. But
I'm not seeing a term in the text of the bylaw.
So if I may supplement Mayor Kasenberg, I just wonder if we maybe should, being that Mike is not North Perth employee, is situation with RSM could change or whoever that might be. So maybe it's worthwhile to investigate a term for this. Certainly, we can add a term or an expiration to the bylaw tonight with a friendly amendment. Okay, we're not at the bylaw stage tonight, but we can tackle that when we get there. All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we consider the resolution? All right, resolution as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth appoints Mike McKean as a building official in the Municipality of North Perth. As I said, I think at the bylaw stage, Councillor Instead, we could add a clause in there as appropriate. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Norton, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Blazek. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That allows us to move along to item 10 on our agenda. Councillors, are there any reports you would like to request of staff or of any of our committees at this time? Recognize Councillor Wardham.
Thanks, Mr. Giesenberg. I'm just wondering if we can get a staff report on redeveloping our former tree program for residents of North Perth. Potentially a at-cost tree program with native trees such as maple spruce. So I'd like to put that motion forward.
Thank you, Councillor Newham. I trust that you're aware of the county's work on the tree program as well, the cultivating opportunity tree grants. So you're looking for something above and beyond that. Okay, thank you. So Councillor Newham is asking for direction of staff to prepare a report on initiating a tree support program for our residents in North Perth. Moved by him. Anyone like to be the seconder on this one? Over here. Thank you, Councillor Rothwell, as your seconder. Discussion or debate? Okay, simple direction to staff for report. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Staff, please bring something forward to us. Anything else under council reports or requests? Councillor Van Dusen.
Thank you through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. I have a couple reports that I'm interested in hearing more about. The first one is just regarding our walking track. There's been some social media announcements about the hours for our walking track, and our track hours kind of fluctuate at different seasons of the year. And typically, the hours are from 8 to 1. A lot of the times of the year, and then in the winter time, it tends to be about 8 to 6 p.m. So through social media, there's been a lot of local commentary by residents, and residents are wondering, for those who are working, they're struggling to be able to use the track because their working hours are beyond the 8 to 6 p.m. Track hours. And there's been, I'll be honest, there's a lot of interest in this track. It's heavily used. I use it myself. And people are looking for opportunities to safely walk indoors and wanting to do that at times that are not always coinciding with work times. So if you start work at 9, it's really hard to walk before work. And if you finish work at 5, it's hard to, use the track before 6. So I'm wondering if perhaps we could have a report by staff to consider options or thoughts around what could be done differently in order to have some extended hours for those who are working.
Okay. It sounds to me like there's a resolution there that you direct staff to prepare a report on improving access by time of day to the walking track at the Steve Kerr Arena complex. Seconder. Is anyone wishing to second this motion? Councillor Blazek, thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? All right, clerk's table, you keeping up with us? All right, let's have a vote on that one.
I'm in favor.
It's always one of those ironies when the mover is kicked out. All right, Councillor Andreessen records a manual vote, and that is carried. You said you had more than one.
And thank you. Just like a second interesting report. We in the past have talked about our clerk's department working on the election process, and the election process that I'm interested in looking at is different voting options for our residents. At this time, or previous to now, we've had voting options that are typically in person, and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for residents to have other means of voting. And I know that our clerk's department's very busy and probably working on this already, but I do know it takes a lot of lead time to prep for an election. And that's certainly what was shared with us, previous to the last election. So I'm wondering if the clerk's department could just give us an update to say that, where they are in the process and if they're expecting that, preparations could be made for other voting means at the next election. Just a quick update. That's all. Thanks.
All right, let me just turn to the clerk. Perhaps the clerk has some information for us about this matter at this point in time.
Thank you, Mayor Kiesenberg, through you. Yes, this is on our radar to bring back a report to council. It will likely be when Clerk Klein returns.
And timeline for that, sorry, just if you can update us.
She returns in October, so I would expect a report late this year or early next year.
Thank you. Is that adequate, Councillor Andreessen? Do we need to request something earlier than that?
It's just that Clerk Klein hasn't been here, so I'm wondering if she may not be up to speed to be able to share where we're at with that. I don't know.
Okay.
Or if it's still possible that upon her return, next steps in proceeding with new voting methods can still be pursued.
Okay. So do you still want to give direction that on the return?
Yeah, it's fine. It's upon Clerk Klein's return is fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm considering that a motion to ask staff, in fact, to ask the clerk on her return to develop a report about alternative voting mechanisms for North Perth. Moved by Councillor Andreessen. Can I call for a seconder on this one? Councillor Plosick, thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Any other council reports before we move on to our next item? Okay, not seeing any, so let's move on to item 11. We have received 2 items of correspondence beyond that already shared in our consent agenda for council's disposition. First is item 11.1, the request from Blissful Cyclones Junior B Hockey Club to designate a home game schedule that can be used by Junior Cyclones Booster Club for securing various licenses. Do we have any questions about this request before we consider the resolution that has been proposed? Not see any, so the resolution is as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth designates the Listowel Junior B Cyclones home games during the 2024-25 season on the dates listed below, and any potential 2024-25 playoff home games on dates to be determined at the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex as municipally significant events for the purpose of the Listowel Junior Cyclones Booster Club Inc. obtaining a special occasion permit from the AGCO. And the dates are as follows: September 13th, 20th, 27th, October 4th, 11th, 18th, 25th, 27th, November 1st, 10th, 15th, 16th, 22, December 13th and 20th, January 5, 10, 19, 24, 31, February 7, 21, 28, and March 7. And we hope it goes later than that, to be honest. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Boswick, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Johnston. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that one is carried. Let's look at 11.2. This one is a request from the Listowel Legion pertaining to road closures for their planned activities and parade associated with Remembrance Day in November of this year as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the road closure request from the Listowel Legion Puppy Committee for the 2024 Remembrance Day parade and cenotaph service, on Monday, November 11th, 2024, commencing at 10:30 a.m. for the following route, starting at the Legion Branch down Elizabeth to the outpatient building, across to Inkerman Street, down Inkerman Street to Wallace Avenue North to the cenotaph, proceed back up Elizabeth Street following the cenotaph service, and that North Perth Public Works, Fire, OPP, and Perth County EMS be advised of the event. Moved by Deputy Mayor Callum, seconded by Councillor Rothwell. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's turn to our bylaws now. Our normal process is to consider all 12 of these under omnibus action. The enabling resolution outlines for each bylaw their number and purpose. But before we go there, would any councillor like to extract one or more of these bylaws for individual consideration? I'm seeing Councillor Blazek's head nod, so let's call on you. Which one would you like to pull?
Item 12.1, bylaw 58, 2024 for independent consideration, please.
12.1 extracted. Anyone else like to extract anything here? I think we need an update. You were proposing, I think, an update, right?
Yes, thanks. 12.10.
12.10.
And perhaps there will be another 12.9 on behalf of Councillor Anstad, I believe, in terms of wording for a provision.
All right. So let's deal with each of those if we can at this point. I think we'll use the same approach we used in the consent agenda, if that's all right with the clerk. So let's look at 12.1. This is the bylaw to establish policies and procedures for the procurement of goods and services and the disposal of surplus goods for the municipality. We have an enablement resolution here that will both enable the new one and repeal the old one. Colleagues, comments? What would you like us to do with this one? Do you want us to consider this straight up and down, just have a vote on this, or do you want us to do some amending or something? Councillor Blazek, I think, had her hand up first, so let's have her go, and then Councillor Duncan.
Just because eyes were on me, I think that we had a pretty fulsome discussion about it, although obviously there are some comments to be made, but from my perspective, I'm just prepared to vote based on the discussion we've already had.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, did you have comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, my comment was I'd just like to move the bylaw and put it on the floor.
Thank you. So Councillor Duncan is serving as mover of this procurement bylaw, which is bylaw, sorry, I've lost the number. Where's the number? 58-2024. Had to look, find it. Moved by Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor Johnston. All right, thank you. Any further discussion or debate on this one? Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I'm certainly willing to support the and vote in favor of the bylaw. However, I think it needs to be underscored that staff need to ensure that the processes that are required in the bylaw are in fact done on uphill, and specifically in terms of the reporting mechanism, that we have to make sure that this council is specifically aware, as was talked about in the presentation, at least quarterly, in terms of those through the delegated authority provisions in the bylaw, that this council is made specifically aware and public in terms of those decisions that have been made to award contracts under the various processes, RFP, RFQ, tender, etc. And secondly, to underscore, as we talked about earlier, the vendor performance criteria is crucial in underlining, ensuring that vendors that we're dealing with meet criteria, and and our staff have to ensure that they are in fact doing what's required under the provisions of bylaw to give this council comfort that what we are saying in bylaw is in fact being carried out with um, due purpose. So on that basis, I'm certainly willing to support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to offer comment on this one? So I think what we'll do is we'll take an individual resolution on this one just for the sake of clarity. I think that's the right approach. So I think the resolution is going to read that the following bylaw is hereby passed. 58-2024 being a bylaw to establish policies and procedures for the procurement of goods and services and the disposal of surplus goods for the municipality. Can I call for a mover on this one? Do we have? It's moved to second. All right, we've got this moved in second. That's, I think, the text of the resolution. Okay. Any further discussion? Just want to make sure that everyone's had their say. Okay. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up from the extraction list is 78-2024 relating to building inspector. And I think this is Councillor Anstead. You want to make a proposed suggestion here?
Thank you, Mayor Caseberg, through you. And like I had mentioned earlier in my comments, just looking at a proposed term on this, I think it's good practice to review this. So I was proposing a term of 2 or 3 years. Thank you.
Shall council consider a term of 2 years? Does that seem acceptable to council at this point in time? All right, so we're going to amend the bylaw of appointment and attach an expiry date for the bylaw. Is that the way to do this, CAO Snell? 2 years following the passing date, which would be today, unless if CAO Snell has another recommendation. Go ahead.
Just in section 3, just where it says this bylaws will come into force and took effect on the date of its final passing. And further that the bylaw expires and repeals on September, let's make it September 31st, 2026.
Everyone comfortable with that? It's just a shade more than 2 years, but that seems okay under the circumstances. All right, there's comfort with that. Moved by Councillor Anstead then, seconded by Councillor Nordum. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? All right, seeing none, let's have a vote. And that is carried. Thank you to the clerks for keeping up with us on this one. And then I think we have one more, which is 79-2024. I think Councillor Rothwell, you asked for this one. So if you want to take us
Thanks,
through
Todd. I
the vote.
appreciate that. As discussed in the comments and mentioned by Planner Garland, I believe that there should be an additional clause added under item 2 of the bylaw that specifically prohibits livestock to be kept on the property. And I'm sure staff would put the specific wording into that bylaw, but that was the discussion point by staff that they would be looking at including that. I believe it was supported by the applicant's agent as well.
Does the clerk have a proposal about how we'll amend this to make sure that this is done?
Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, I will follow up with Planner Garland to confirm that we can add in a section to include an additional clause to item 2 to prohibit the keeping of livestock on the property.
Okay, thank you. Does that meet with, okay, so call you the mover of this one, seconded by Councillor Duncan, thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. All right, so let's go back to our omnibus um, action here, which is going to take out 3 subsections because we've dealt with them individually. But as follows, the following bylaws are hereby passed. 66-2024 being a bylaw to authorize maintenance and repair of the Graham Municipal Drain. 67-2024 being a bylaw to authorize maintenance and repair of the Hannah Tap Municipal Drain. 68-2024 being a bylaw to authorize maintenance and repair of the Hannah Sibenga Municipal Drain. 69-2024 being a bylaw to authorize maintenance and repair of the Harold Good Municipal Drain. 70-2024 being a bylaw to authorize maintenance and repair of the Maitland Ellis Municipal Drain. 71-2024 being a bylaw to authorize maintenance and repair of the McClory Municipal Drain. And 72-2024 being a bylaw to authorize maintenance and repair of the Weir Municipal Drain. I call for a mover. Councillor Johnson's smiling as he nods his head. I know why. Councillor Andreessen is our seconder. Thank you. Councillor Johnston has a history of asking mayors to repeat the resolution. Naughty boy. Naughty boy, yeah. All right. It seems like it's an all drain resolution pretty much now. Any discussion or debate on these drains that are proposed for action? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 13 on our agenda. For item 13.1, do any councillors wish leave to give notice of motion this evening? I'm not seeing anything, so let's move to item 14. For item 14, are there any announcements that would be a benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. I'm excited to announce that the local United Way is hosting our local campaign kickoff on Friday this week, September the 13th. And the event will be from 11 till about 2:30. It'll be in the parking lot in between TD Bank and Wharton Upton Grove. And at that time, we'll be announcing different, information about the campaign and speeches about, of course, our new campaign goal. And I just want to invite council to come and participate. There's going to be some food trucks there, and should be some excitement and fun at that opportunity to get together. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen, and staff, of course, are also invited to come. I think that's a fair addition to the mix here. All right, any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, then let's move on to item 15 on our agenda. We have no matters for consideration in a closed session meeting of council tonight, which means that for item 16 we can skip past because we don't have anything to report about, not having held a closed session meeting. Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. I'm going to read out a resolution that will enable that. As follows, that bylaw 80-2024 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth is hereby passed. Moved by Councillor Duncan, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Councillor Anstead is in favor, records a manual vote, and with that is carried. And that means we have taken action and deliberated on all the business that was put before us in our agenda tonight. Therefore, appropriate for us to consider adjournment. I have a resolution to that effect as follows: that the council meeting adjourns at 9:03 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, September 16th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Kozik. Thank you. It's not debatable. Let's have that vote. and that is carried. Colleagues, our next regular meeting is next Monday, September 16th.